Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2, Episode 2 of Locke and Key. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we have Gabe and Eden testing out the new key that they made, and said key proceeds to liquefy people. We actually don't know what key that, well, I'd assuming that, my initial thought was like, if they can't get the Omega key, because it's like, well, like you're never going to be able to get the Locks to casually hand over the Omega key to you, but specifically what ends up, like, I guess that might be what they're trying to do, make another Omega key. I'd assume that, I mean, it's still unclear, like, what other key would they want to make, but that's what Gabe is trying to make, a very specific one. And we also find out that they captured Kenzie's fear. I guess it's like, whatever key that they're trying to make, maybe they plan on using it against her. I mean, that thing is hard to kill anyway. I wonder, could any of the keys actually kill Kenzie's fear? And if they did actually kill it, like, would there be any ramifications to Kenzie, especially considering it's not in her head anymore? But, yeah, because they brought that up last episode, like, Tyler had referenced, like, her not having her fear in her head. Is like, right, that's still, like, never got resolved from last season, so obviously you have each of the, well, actually the Locke family as a whole, individually dealing with their respective situations. Well, you have a big part of Tyler's story this episode dealing with the Jackie situation as it's gotten worse, because in the middle of class, like, it starts drifting from her memory. It's like, oh, like, it's like, I didn't do the summer reading. He's like, yeah, you did, but no matter how much you try to tell her and explain it to her, it didn't mean anything. She's just like, yeah, like, I don't have this information, like, there's no point in trying. So she turned a pop quiz in and got a 0 on it. But then later on, she's talking to Tyler, she's like, I remember everything. And so Tyler brought up the whole, right, being an adult situation is like, now that you're like about to be 18, we finally found the marker of when it starts happening, which for her, it's like, you know, it's like, but that's not even really being an adult. In some cases it is, but maybe it has to deal with like your brain chemistry, like your brain is constantly developing until you're like 25, but maybe it starts reaching some semblance of adulthood at like 18, because in some cultures, like being, you know, I mean, granted, it varies from culture to culture, but typically like 18 is kind of like adulthood, because I mean, even in the eyes of the court, I mean, depending on the severity of things, but typically at 18 is where you can start being tried as an adult, typically. Once again, under certain circumstances, you can get tried younger, but you get the point I'm trying to make. So maybe there's a specific reason why specifically 18, but we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, I think a lot of that childlike wonderment, like, maybe as you get older, it starts shrinking, but that part of you is still there until you reach, like, 18. It's kind of like, you know, maybe it's kind of like that Peter Pan thing of just kind of, like, never wanting to grow up, wanting to stay young forever, you know. So, but, so Jackie and Tyler record videos, you know, be like, right, this is what happened, earliest memories with the keys. It's like, right, you show me this memory of you and your dad fishing. Even though, like, because his first experience was using that to try and learn everything he could about England. As, you know, we saw that play out in season 1. He's like, yeah, not successful, but, you know, another attempt was, you know, her seeing a memory of him and his dad fishing. So that's the only way they can capture those. And so it's very like 50 First Dates-esque, you know, the Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore movie. It's very, got that kind of feel to it. I am curious, would that have some of, because that's where we haven't really gotten into, like, the really sad aspect of that is, because without the memories of the keys, like, it destroys everything tied to it, because Tyler's worried. It's like, right, like, well, because even Jackie was like, everything, because a lot of their relationship and a lot of their key moments between each other were shared with the keys. Like, they did a lot of bonding and growing and developing as a couple with those keys, so every memory tied to it will be completely erased, like it didn't happen. So that doesn't just apply to Jackie, because Tyler's like, in a couple months, that's going to happen to me. A couple more years, that's going to happen to you. Like, at first, because he's worried, because it's like, if anything happens in the future, I won't know about the keys, and I won't be able to help you and Bodhi. In a couple more years, you won't be able to help Bodhi because you won't remember. And so our little brother's going to have to face everything on his own. And that's also the thing, too. Like, all of their friends, you know? Like, everyone's in the know. Like, whether it's, you know, Logan, the Savinis, you know, Scott, Doug, and like everyone, like all these, you know, and now they just let Abby in on it because Kenzie showed her the superhuman, well, the strength, or the Hercules key, or what they were referring to it as, the super strength. But it's like, yeah, like that has been a big foundation of a lot of their like friendships and relationships. And it's like the moment they get older, like it's that very thing of like, there's a manga I read called Madoka Box that kind of ties into this in nearing the end of its series. It's a little spoilerish, but it almost kind of ties into that of like, right, the wonderment of like, oh, when we were younger, like all this crazy stuff we did, but the moment we got older, that all started disappearing. It's kind of that, it's the power of belief, you know, it's just like, it's there when you're younger, but, you know, it's just somewhere along the way, you just kind of let go of that childlike wonderment. And that specific terminology, and that I'm referencing, like, that's a reference from something I don't know what it is. It's like a movie or a TV show that talks about that, like, you know, what growing up kind of does to you, you know, and I think, I don't know, it's the complicated thing of, like, the flip side to all of this, you know, enjoying all this stuff to the keys, and now, you know, the dark side of it is being like, yeah, the moment you get older, unless you find a way around it, it's all going to get taken away from you. Because that also, it didn't just apply to the friendship, it brought Tyler, Kinsey, and Bodhi closer together. And it, in its own way, it did help heal their family. And it's like, without those memories, because these are also ties to their dad, you know, so it's a legacy they're carrying on from their father. So with that, that's kind of another angle to a lot of that will probably disappear as well. And who knows what kind of shifts that will make. Like without these memories, like who knows what that would do to them in the long run. So that's what Tyler's kind of dealing with. Then Kinsey's dealing with how she's feeling about the whole situation. Obviously, you know, she starts realizing like, right, I've never actually been inside of Gabe's head, and it's like, is that weird? And he's like, and Tyler's like, it's only weird if you think it's weird. But she talks about having been in Scott's head. I guess a lot of this is like in between, like maybe in between episodes of season 1 that we just never got to see, like moments like that, or maybe it's like sometime in between that, like 3 months in between season 1's finale and now. But because that, like, obviously, like when, like you could tell there are moments, and even Gabe is starting to realize it, like Kinsey is slipping away from him, because like when there's like, oh Scott, you might as well tell them, and it's just like she pulls her hand away from Gabe and he immediately picks up on it, like he's recognizing like, right, I'm losing my connection with her. She's too busy like connecting with Scott, because they want Scott to like start working on the sequel, and he kind of lets everybody know what's what, which I love. Abby's like, wait, are we not going to talk about the fact is about these magic keys? It's like, it's a lot to process. It's like, yeah, Doug, the moment he found out about it, he passed out, and he's like, hey, come on. You know, it's like, it's an understandable reaction. Also love that, like, they need to expand their fan base beyond Doug's mom. And I love that, like, Scott was like, no, she's an OG. Show some respect for, like, our OG fans. But at the end of the day, Kinsey is sad, you know, about Scott leaving, and even because it's like, yeah, Kinsey's like, yeah, I mean, who knows if he'll actually get in or not? And, you know, Gabe is like, sure, do you not want him to get? So no, of course I want him to get in. It'd be a great opportunity. He's like, okay, cool. And so he starts trying to ask her questions like, so do you know how to make any keys? It's like, oh yeah, I'm just asking because, you know, I want to know, like, see, like, you know, maybe your dad told you something about it. It's like, no, like, our dad didn't even tell us anything about the keys. The only way we know anything about the keys and stuff like that is because obviously Chamberlain, like, who Bodhi had visited, I don't know if any of them had like visited him in that time frame. So, but it's like, yeah, because he was trying to figure out if they had some like natural talent or explanation on how to make keys. It never really crossed their minds at all about whether they could make keys or not. But obviously, at one point, Kinsey and him are together, and she's like, oh, let me take a look inside your head, because there comes up conversations about his parents, which he's kind of avoiding that. I'm like, well, I guess you could always get Eden to like turn into somebody and pretend that that's your parent. I figured that would be a way to cover that, because he's like, yeah, his parents are getting divorced, so you need to like only need one to show up to kind of appease any questions people would have about that. Because that's also the thing, anytime someone's parents aren't around, you're like, how can we tell that's the real person? Because, like, I mean, these type of stories, these are like manga where, like, I mean, I don't know if, like, just even American comic books do that same thing where manga go where, like, oh, let's not tackle the parents too much, because it's like, yeah, like, there's high schoolers, let's focus on the main characters, but their parents don't, because then you have to start doing stuff with the parents, or kind of like Stranger Things, like, a lot of those parents, except for, like, Mike's mom, like, pops in amongst all the parents, and obviously Will's mom, but, like, everyone else's parents typically fade to the background, like, in, like, Stranger Things. So it's kind of like that thing of, like, most stuff just kind of steers away from the parents. That's why, like, people will always joke about, well, joke, but also be serious about, like, oh, yeah, like, that's why Disney just kills off the parents all the time. Like, it's just like, their parents aren't around. So manga and anime have a tendency to do that as well. So But that's why I was wondering, like, that's why I'm almost like a little weird, but it's like, you can like, a lot of the characters you haven't been introduced to their families at all, because it's probably, maybe it's a bigger thing in the comics, or maybe it's just kind of a thing that's not touched on even in the comics, so they don't bother touching on it in the show either. Probably unless it's like plot relevant in certain regards. But obviously he was snapped at Kenzie of like, no, I don't want you in my head. It's just no, just drop it. And she's like, okay. He's like, I'm sorry. I want you to know about me, but it's just not comfortable with that. Like, if there's anything you want to know, just ask me. It's like, yeah, like I can lie my ass off about what you need to know about me, but I can't let you in my head. Because it's like, yeah, the whole thing, I don't have fake, like changing my identity doesn't fake my memories. It just be all my memories as Lucas and everything I've done. So... But obviously that in itself, little by little, the rift between Gabe and her is growing more and more. And obviously, you know, like that spark she felt with Scott. Because it's a real connection. That's the difference. It's a real connection with Scott, whereas Gabe, it's like fabricated. Whether Kenzie realizes it or not, on some subconscious level, she knows that things with Gabe is a little off. But with Scott, it feels right. You know? And so ultimately... Gabe has no choice but to like pretend to hang around with Bodhi so he can get access to the ghost key. Obviously them having fun with the Hercules key, as well as like the key that like had to put stuff in the cabinet and it reconstitutes it. But going to the ghost key, he's like, oh yeah, talking to Chamberlain, their ancestor, and being like, yeah, I want to make a key for Kenzie. And it's like, yeah, it's all about intention, but also you have to add your own blood to it, because by adding your blood to it, you allow someone to have access to your entire heart, which I'm like, that's probably going to be an issue going forward, because if you do that, like, she'll be able to see into the depths of your heart of like, once again, maybe there's some truth to like, yeah, you might be using her, it might have started that way, but now you might actually be falling in love with Kenzie. It seems like it's just a means to an end, but like the fact that she's drifting away from him, yeah, it's from like, oh, you're no longer useful, I can't like sway you like I could before. I can't use you as a means anymore, a means of to an end. But it's like, I think maybe some genuine feelings might have been developing as well. We'll have to wait and see. But once again, we never got clarity on what exactly the key. Like I said, I threw it out. I'm thinking he's trying to make another Omega key, but maybe there's something else. Maybe it has something to specifically do with trying to make a key so it's possible to get the other keys from the locks. Because as demons, they can't take the keys from the locks. They have to be willingly given over. So maybe it has some correlation to do with that. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see, like, how, and also that answers a question I had last episode about the keys. I was like, do you just like, does each one just randomly make a key? It's like, no, it is based on your intention. Like, you have to focus your entire mind on your intentions of what you want the key to be and what it to do. So they've only got one more shot at making a key, because like, these are the only, like, as they call it, whispering metal, which makes sense because I guess that ties into why the keys whisper. Like, specifically, it seems like it's tied to the locks, but also because it seems like the locks are the ones who made the keys in the first place, because they were just whispering metal beforehand. So it's just interesting to know that each one of those keys is one of the demons that's like inside of the things from the other side that's inside of Lucas and Eden. It's just interesting to think about that. So I guess that's where the whispering comes from. I wonder, is it like, or do they turn into like whispering metals, or, you know, just is that what their natural state kind of is, like, oh, that is the demons or whatever voice. I don't know, it's interesting to kind of dive deeper into that as we progress through this, but it's just interesting to know, like, right, it isn't just random what those keys, I mean, I guess it can be if your intentions aren't focused, but once again, they've only got one shot because there's no other whispering metal here. They would have to open the Omega door to like get any more, or let any more of their people through, which once again, I think that's the end goal and the end result. So tying Nina and Bodhi's stories together. Bodhi starting 5th grade. It's like, oh, assignment, like, oh, what you do in the summer? And Bodhi shows off some of the stuff he did, but it's like, right, you know, he's a kid, so he's not thinking, right, of course no one's going to believe me. I was supposed to take the assignment, like, serious, but I didn't. Regardless, now that, but he ends up bonding with a friend, Jamie, who kind of went through a similar circumstance as to him, where her mom died like a year ago, and obviously his dad died a year ago, so they kind of bond over that, and he opens up to, obviously he had to be like, hey, so try and take this key from me, and she takes it, so it's like, okay, cool, you're not a demon or anything. He's worried, but yeah, he opens up to her about everything, but she's like, right, you had to check me out, like, upon hearing about demons and everything, but it's like, right, gotta keep it secret about the keys, because this gives him, like, because Bodhi, other than Rufus, Bodhi didn't have any friends last season, knowing his own age. Because we rarely didn't spend much time with Bodhi at school. Like, the only time was like when he was worried about Dodge coming after him and he like took a weapon to school. That's the only instance of him at school we really ever touched on last season. So, but him to have a friend his own age, you know, especially now that Rufus is in Nebraska and can't be like, they can't be as tight knit bros as they were last season. But it turns out that Jamie's dad is Josh, the douchebag teacher, history teacher that was, as he even explained it later on, like mansplained to Nina what was going on, because she's working at the school now, so she's doing like remodeling work for the school, in particular like a theater room, but he came in there being like, oh, you want to put these carpets or whatever on this wood floor, it's blah, 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 blah. He was so far up his own ass, which Nina kind of snapped back like, yeah, if I ever want to come and like correct you about history stuff in your own class. He kind of realized how much of a douchebag he was, but then he like later on tried to make an apology to her, especially when he found out like his daughter and Bodhi are hitting it off. But for him, he wanted to, like, it's like, right, he heard about, like, obviously going through what he went through. He kind of did it what Nina did. He wanted to, like, have a fresh start. This thing of, like, oh, why'd you choose Matheson? He's like, oh, I just want to live in New England regardless. But turns out, nope. He doesn't seem, he's not a demon, but he is someone that is aware of the keys. Now, I'm curious, is he aware of the keys because maybe he's part of a family line that was connected to the keys, but they lost the keys? It might be one of those things of, like, they're a family that was supposed to forget about the keys, but remembered, and now they're aware of it. Because whoever he is, he's, like, latched onto the Locke house. So I wonder, did he cross paths with Rendell in the past, and that's where this is all going? Because that seems like his whole situation seems definitely separate from everything with the... Well, at the very least, we know what this might actually trail back to and connect back to is some of the history, as we saw that captain getting possessed by a demon. We don't know how that got resolved, so how did the demon situations work? Once again, we know that Lucas is a special case amongst the demons because he's an Echo, so his circumstances work a little differently from them. But, like, what if Josh is from that bloodline of, like, that captain who got possessed in, like, the beginning of the first episode? Like, what if there's some connection there? Like, because that's such a through line that they set up, but we never got the aftermath of, like, well, what happened next? I mean, I guess that's the point of, like, there's so much about the keys that the Locks are unaware of, so... He's definitely got his interest in Key House, but for what purpose, we currently do not know. We'll have to kind of wait and see where things kind of shape up from there, which is kind of sad. Someone that she's getting close to, it seems like they're hitting it off of like, oh yeah, let's like the kids have a play date every once in a while. It's like, right, he might be up to some sinister stuff, especially because he might be at least somewhat knowledgeable about the keys and Key House and everything. So we'll have to see where that kind of goes. But hanging around Aaron, it finally clicks in Kenzie's head about what Ellie said. It's like, right, Ellie's gone, but she said they found a way to remember. So other adults did too, the rest of the crew. Because we know that Mark ended up killing himself. So like he remembered enough about the keys to be able to do that even in his older age. Because Ellie called and warned about everything going down when Rendell died. So... they both go inside, but they don't see the younger Erin. Obviously, that was a circumstance that got touched on last season about her younger self having been locked in there. Now, whether that's just a state of, like, where her mind is, because she's apparently been stuck like this ever since, like, everything went down all those years ago. She's basically been in this state. Because we know Dodge ran into, like, that younger version of herself inside of her head, but just kind of made sure to kind of lock her deep within, so she was still kind of stuck and couldn't find her way out, her way back out, so... Because like when Tyler and Kenzie went in there, it was kind of like, this place is kind of wild. Even to the point they went into a locker. Kenzie opens up a book that has like all these Omega symbols, and it like dissolves into her hands. Because I guess it's like her mind is in such an unstable state, like everything's starting to deteriorate. And I think that's what that was kind of represented. I'm curious, like, is that a condition as a byproduct of like her mind, technically her, like the core of who she is, her mind elsewhere, because her younger self is kind of lost in the maze that is her mind, or is that just naturally happening? Like, will the two combine together is what I'm trying to say. Like, even if, like, when her younger mind returns at the end of the episode to her body, does that still, like, will her condition still go on, or is it a byproduct of her mind being locked away for so long that, I don't know. I'm interested to see how they handle that. But it was kind of trippy, how, like, obviously it's like books come flying out of the lockers. Also, all the lockers are stuck in, like, her being obsessed with Rendell, but it's like, for her, time stopped. Like, she doesn't realize how much time has passed until she runs into Kinsey and Tyler, like, oh, we're Rendell's kids. It's like, wait, what? His kids? What? No, like, what? We're teenagers. It's like, she doesn't know, like, how much time has passed. She's been stuck in here the entire time. How that happened, like I said, whether that's a byproduct of her condition, like, maybe the last time she used the head key, like, this happened, or someone did that to her on purpose. Like, we know, like, I mean, prior to Dodge running into her last season. Because the last time we saw her flashback-wise was when they split up the keys. It seemed like she was okay then, but we never got any clarification on that. But, you know, at the end of the day, she is brought out of her mind, and it's like, yeah, this is you. So she finally reconnects and wakes up. So what this means, a part of me is also wondering, like, well, the effects to make it so that she remembers, is it just because her mind was locked away now that she's, like, reconstituted, like, all back in, like, where she's supposed to be? Like, does whatever effect Ellie did to make her make sure she and the others, like, remembered, like, was that set in beforehand? Because I was wondering, like, now that she's in her adult body, like, maybe because she has a mind of her teenage self, but I was like, now that she's in her adult body, I was wondering, like, will it be a thing of, like, now she'll forget about the magic? Or, like I said, the circumstances might already be set in stone for her. This might have been something they set up years ago before they got to the age where they could completely forget. So it's already been submitted. Like, it happened before she got locked inside of her mind. So many questions. I continue to have a lot of questions. I'm really curious to see where the next episode ultimately takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.